What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here. Welcome to week 3 of the Premier League Weekend Reviews. So, if you've been following the Premier League for long enough, you know by now that after the first 3 or 4 weeks, it's the international break. So, this is the weekend right before it. Kind of a sad, bittersweet type thing. You know, you enjoy the games, but then you realize we won't get them next week. But anyway, so a lot of these teams coming into this weekend, some of them wanted to prove themselves before the weekend or the international break began. Some of them are just looking to hold on to the momentum they've got. And then a couple of them just ended it off poorly and just like, thank goodness for the international break so we can regroup and hopefully figure out what's wrong. So let's start it all off with the very first game of the weekend. Bournemouth welcomed Man City to their home. 2-1 win for Man City. Ultimately, obviously there was a lot of controversy at the end with Sterling getting his second yellow after being pulled into the crowd. Aguero possibly altercation with one of the stewards there. So a lot of controversy there. But the thing nobody's really talking about, and so I haven't really seen enough, I guess, reviews, previews, whatever. I haven't seen enough people talking about what happened right before the goal. And that is, you've got Josh King making a great run down the field. He's had a shot. Keeper makes the save. They roll it out. And I can't remember if it was Otamendi or company, but Musette slides in and looks like he completely won the ball, but then whoever it was that had it went flopped. And the referee was just like, oh yeah, that's a foul. And nobody's talking about the fact that that may not have been a foul, because if he doesn't call the flop, then Musette's got the ball. It's a 4v1 situation for Bournemouth, and Man City doesn't have a chance to go back down and score. So nobody's really talking about that. They're all just focused on the whole Sterling and Aguero situation. So I don't know. In my opinion, I feel like that part of it needs to be looked at as well to see, did the referee make a right decision? Should Man City have had another attack? Or should it have been Bournemouth breaking on goal with Man City's defenders once again giving away the ball? But either way, regardless of that, the problem that I think a lot of people are starting to see is Man City's the same as last year. And I mean, honestly, you look at their draw against Everton last week, you look at the fact that they nearly drew Bournemouth this week and probably should have. A lot of the bookmakers that peg them to be the title favorites, I think, are starting to question. In my opinion, they're still the same as where I put them at the beginning of the year, third or fourth. They're not going to challenge for the title because they're going to have too many games where the defense is giving it away. They're making stupid decisions in the back. They're not defending well enough and give away goals. So that's pretty much exactly what I thought going into this one. For Bournemouth, though, definitely looked a lot better than they have the first 2 weeks. Just really challenged Man City. Came out full attack, pretty much the attacking style that we've seen them come out sometimes with in the past couple of years that they've been in the Premier League. But they really put them on their heels at times and put a lot of pressure on them. I still feel like once the team sort of combines a little bit more, gets Defoe involved, gets Ake more involved, I think once they start to figure each other out and work more as a team, they'll definitely start to pick up some points. But obviously losing the first 3 games is not a good start for them. But based on the performance I saw, I do expect them to pick up some points over the next few weeks and just sort of get themselves back into the mid-table side of it, which is where they probably belong right now. Then we had 4 games at the 10 o'clock, my 10 o'clock session. First one, Watford versus Brighton, a 0-0 draw. Watford went down to 10 men early on with Britos going in, studs up onto a guy's knee. Very, very ugly challenge. But in my opinion, this is a poor result for both teams. Probably a little bit better for Watford, considering they managed to hold off Brighton for most of the game, being down to 10 men. At that point, you probably would take a point. It's not the worst result in the world. Obviously, they would have preferred to have won, but I think a draw at that point is okay. For Brighton, though, I really think this hurts. 3 games in a row that they have not scored, and obviously now they have a point, but still, you're not scoring. You're being held goalless in all of these games, and now you face a team that goes down to 10 men within 14 minutes and you can't go score. There's a problem here. They have an issue with their strikers up top. They're not getting the job done. So unless they can pick up a good quality striker in the last few days of the transfer window, they may have some issues. They may not be able to challenge for anything this year. They may just They may be the Sunderland of last season that was always in the relegation zone and never really looked like getting out of it. Next game, Newcastle West Ham, 3-0 to Newcastle. Great result for them. Shows that the first two games, obviously a tough game against Tottenham, and then obviously Huddersfield has been showing that they are kind of the surprise team of the promoted ones. The one that everybody pretty much thought was going to drop, and now they're undefeated so far. So very difficult game against them against Huddersfield. But then this week, beating West Ham 3-0. Problem for West Ham, but a relief, I think, for Newcastle fans. Just seeing the fact that they can score, they can be dangerous. West Ham, though, have to fix something. They're still not quite dead and out of it. They're still the last week's performance against Southampton, I think, showed that they do have some quality. They are able to perform, but this game shows that there needs to be some fixing. There needs to be some players that come in. You need to make some changes because clearly there's problems. There are a lot of problems that they can't really figure out right now. Not having Arnautovic for this game is obviously one of them, but you expect Chicharito to pick off a goal. You expect Joe Hart to make some better saves. You expect Zabaleta with his experience to sort of help out the defense a little bit more, but they concede 3 and then they can't even score 1. There needs to be some changes at the club. So next one, Huddersfield Southampton. Like I said about Huddersfield, kind of the surprise promoted team, the one nobody believed in, and now they've beaten 2 teams, and now they've drawn against Southampton. 3 good results for them. Southampton is probably the best team they faced so far, and they managed to hold them goalless. Obviously, not getting them goal themselves is a little bit frustrating for them, but that's a good result. For Southampton, not really a bad result because Huddersfield has shown that they have a fighting spirit, but at the same time, Southampton needs to pick up some points here and there, and this is probably one of the ones where you would hope to pick up 3 points. And so only picking up 1, it could hurt them down the line, whether it's they get 10th or whether they get 9th. This could hurt them, but I don't think it's the end of the world for them. I don't think it's something that's going to worry anybody because Huddersfield have shown the quality that they have. Then we get to probably I wouldn't say the most surprising result, but I think the worst result for one team, and that's Swansea Crystal Palace. Palace, this might be it for them. I can't imagine what must be going on at the club right now because the first week you lose at home to newly promoted Huddersfield 3-0. There's already an issue there. That should have been the first warning sign. Next week you lose 1-0 to Liverpool. Not a terrible result. You held Liverpool to 1 goal. You weren't able to score any yourself, but it's not terrible. But now you're at home again and you lose 2-0 to Swansea. There's a problem. I mean, the Huddersfield one is already kind of okay, something's wrong. Then the Swansea one just sort of piles on the pressure and just says there needs to be a change. Because you've been held scoreless in all 3 of these games, and now you've lost twice in a row at home to 2 teams that are not going to be one of the best teams in the league, unless it's going to be another surprise year like Leicester. But there's a problem here. All of the players that they've had the past couple of years that have helped them, Benteke, Zaha, Cabaye, they managed to hold on to those 3 guys, and they managed to get them some goals and assists. You bring in Loftus-Cheek up top. You bring in Fosu-Mensah in the back. You should be more solid. You brought in some quality young players. You should be more solid, and they can't do anything. They can't even score against Swansea, who conceded 4 against Man U. So there's clearly a problem here for Crystal Palace. Bottom of the table, rock bottom, haven't scored a single goal. There better be some changes. There better be some new signings. Get somebody experienced, bring somebody in that knows what they're doing. Quit relying on the youth players, I guess, that you're using. But yeah, it's not been good for Crystal Palace, and things are looking pretty relegation-ish this year. So as for Swansea, though, I think picking up 3 points finally, really a positive for them. Especially 3 points on the road, that's really good. They're 2 younger strikers up top. Abraham and Ayew, both of them get a goal in this game as well. So I think that shows a lot of promise for them. I think they're starting to find their scoring ways, and so hopefully this can be a step up for them, and they can start moving up the table a little bit more. Man U versus Leicester. Once again, Man U for me just looked the best team in the league. I already said, the first 2 weeks, obviously, they looked really strong. They looked the best. But I didn't think either of those games, they came up against an attacking force that should threaten them. Leicester do have that. They've got Vardy, they've got Okazaki, they've got Mahrez, even Albrighton at times can show up. They've got a very good strike force, and they just look so out of it because, man, you really did a good job of putting them off their game. Bailly, even though he's not the best defender, he roughed up Vardy. He made it to where Vardy didn't have time to play. I can't remember who it was. I think it was a mixture of Blend and Jones did a very good job of shutting Mahrez down and making sure he could only have just a couple of crosses here and there, but really did a good job of just keeping him contained. So even though I'm not a Man U fan, I'm not a Mourinho fan, they do look really good this year. And getting 2 goals, even though Lukaku didn't score, a couple other players are popping up. Rashford gets a goal, Fellaini gets a goal. So their goals are coming from elsewhere aside from the player that everybody expects to score them the goals. And I think that's very promising for them because, I question Lukaku. Is he going to be able to score in big games? Is he going to score when they need it the most? Or is it going to be just like last year for him where, we're already up 2-0 and then he scores 2 goals? Who cares then? But clearly, even though he didn't score, even though he missed a penalty, that didn't matter because you have other quality players coming off the bench that can get you goals. So I still see them being probably the favorites so far this year. On to Sunday, we have first 2 games going on. First one, West Brom Stoke. Draw probably suits both teams very well. West Brom, they love to tie. That's one of the things they love to do. Stoke on the road, getting a draw is a very good result for them. I will say, though, if there's one that this hurts, probably West Brom a little bit more, just because they're typically a team that do well because they win the games at home against other mid-table and lower sides. So this is one that they want and probably need to pick up 3 points. I don't think this is going to drop them into relegation battle or anything, but I do think this could kind of hurt them a little bit later down the line where, maybe they need just one more win to sort of cement their safety, the 42-point mark or whatever, and all of a sudden there are a couple games where they can't get to it. They lose a couple games in a row, they're right there, and then you think back to this one and think, well, if they had just picked up those 2 extra points against Stoke, who's just another mid-table side, that's probably going to hurt them a little bit later. So Chelsea-Everton, obviously, I already talked about that game. For Chelsea, it's another result that sort of cements that the Burnley result was not, it's not a sign of this year. It's not a sign of things to come. Oh, this is the end of the world for them. Honestly, they looked the best team on the pitch. Everton, though, in my opinion, just didn't show up. They didn't have the best of games. I already talked about in my Chelsea review how it may have been Europa League. Who knows why they weren't really there, but you could just tell there was a lack of effort, especially up top. Sandro didn't look quality enough. Obviously, Calvert-Lewin has looked pretty good for them, so I don't think this is really going to hurt them in the long run. Going to Stamford Bridge against Chelsea is always going to be a difficult game, especially when you play Thursday. But yeah, I don't know. I look at this and say, obviously very good for Chelsea, but for Everton, not the end of the world. But it is a sign of, okay, we do need to step up in some other departments. We need to step up our attack a bit more. Defensively, they still looked pretty solid. It took a few really good goals from Chelsea to get through to them. So, it's kind of an average result for both teams. Chelsea weren't challenged. Everton really didn't do much, but still held up okay. So, next 2 games were probably 2 results for the top 6 that are very, very surprising. The first one, Spurs versus Burnley. Another draw, or another home result that kind of just instigates this whole the curse of Wembley situation. Obviously last week losing to Chelsea, everybody was focusing on the Wembley curse, the Wembley curse. Oh, are they going to be able to do this at home? Here's the thing. I talked about this last week. I didn't think that result meant anything for the Wembley curse. Chelsea they needed to bounce back from that loss the first week. So obviously they're going to step up their game. It's the first game at Wembley for Tottenham this year, their first home game. It's going to be a growing process, so obviously going to be a difficult game to get a win out of. But to lose probably did hurt them a little bit. However, this week you're facing Burnley. Now, Burnley are a very strong, resilient side. They typically do well against the top teams. But after last week's loss, Tottenham should have bounced back. They should have said, all right, let's just cut this whole Wembley curse crap out and let's just go out there and get a good result. So to draw after leading on top of that, there is probably some worry there now. And part of that, like I've said before about Tottenham's transfer window activity, really haven't gone and gotten anybody. And I, even whenever I was making my predictions at the beginning of the year about my, the table where I thought everybody was going to be, I put them out of the top 4, and even, where did I put them? Yeah, I put them in 7th because I did think they were going to struggle, not because of Wembley, but because they haven't made any changes to their team. And so last week's loss, not the end of the world. This week's draw, it's kind of scary for them. So I just imagine some people at the club right now are thinking, okay, we need to go make some more signings. We need to go get some more people in because clearly what we have, while still a good team, we need to make some more changes. We need to bring in some more quality to help some of the areas that we've maybe lost a little bit of our pace in. For Burnley, though, a draw away from home against the top 6 team, typical for Burnley, I'd say. They tend to do fairly well against top 6 teams. And so, draw really helps their case that they're going to be clear of relegation this season. And then, of course, the one everybody's talking about, Liverpool 4, Arsenal 0. For Liverpool, obviously great result, but I think you compare it to the fact that Arsenal look weak right now. They don't look good enough. If I were a Liverpool fan, I would not be too excited. Obviously, be very excited that you beat Arsenal 4-0. It's a great result. But I think you look at it and say it still wasn't the best game in the world. Arsenal really didn't look up to it. They did not look that good in the game. And so you have to say there still are some worrying signs for Liverpool. The draw against Watford. Honestly, typically they do well against the top 6 anyway, so this is not a surprising result. So I'd still say Liverpool do need to make some changes. They still need to bring in some defense before the end of the transfer window because, that this is just one result. And this is typically the moment where Liverpool fans start to get all high up and on themselves, and then next thing you know, their next game against, Huddersfield or probably some lower team, they go into that game thinking, oh, we beat Arsenal 4-0, nobody can touch us now. And all of a sudden they draw or lose to one of these lower teams, and now their confidence is knocked back down. So I think they still need to get in some defense so they can battle against these lower teams and get results against them. But as far as, Arsenal are concerned, things are looking really scary for them. They only brought in, typical for Arsenal, they brought in that one quality signing in Lacazette. He doesn't even start. Welbeck does. You've got the fact that you've just lost 4-0. For any top side, losing by more than 3 goals is typically a very scary sign in any case. You got the fact that Wenger just seems completely ignorant to everything going on around him. You've got all these fans, even some of the fans that were behind Wenger are now in the Wenger out parade. You've got, a lot of these players looking completely demotivated. They look like they don't want to play. You're losing Oxlade-Chamberlain possibly to Chelsea. Sanchez looks like he doesn't want to play anymore. His attitude just looks awful. Ozil once again completely disappeared from a game. Welbeck, who honestly has looked one of their better players up top, completely non-existent. They couldn't score against a Liverpool side that has no defense at all, and instead of with Mignolet, went with Karius, who's even worse of a goalkeeper. There are a lot of problems here. I could name so many issues with Arsenal, but it's already up to almost 20 minutes on the video, so I don't want to talk too long about this. But yeah, clearly there are some issues. Clearly they need to make some changes. This may be the one transfer window for Arsenal where instead of just signing one quality player, they actually sign a few quality players. But clearly they need to make some changes. Possibly a change in leadership. This could be Arsene Wenger's final season. I'd say if the next few results don't go very well, obviously they're 1 win and then 2 losses. If you don't get 3 wins out of 4 out of the next 4 games, I'd say it's possibly time for Arsene Wenger to go. Because as much as he's done for this club, as much as he's done to help them, it's starting to get to a point where he's completely oblivious to what's going on. And kind of had the same thought as a Chelsea fan when Mourinho's third year happened after he won the title, what was that, 3 years ago whenever we dropped to 10th? There was a sense at the first few games there were some problems. There were some bust-ups at the club. There were some issues going on. Some players were talking out against the club and the manager. There were some issues there. But because of the history Mourinho had, because he won us the title the year before, a lot of Chelsea fans were hesitant to say, okay, yeah, it's time for him to go. But then the results kept going poor. The results kept dropping off. And then at one point, we're bottom half of the table and we're 15 games in. At that point, it's kind of like, okay, we need to make a change. For Wenger, not the same issue. Yes, they won the FA Cup last year, but they didn't even make Champions League. They're not looking great so far this year. They've lost 2 out of 3 games, 1 against Stoke. Yeah, you've got some issues, you got some changes to make, and if things don't improve over the next 4 games, I think that's the point where the board probably steps in and says, okay, enough's enough. We can't keep having this average year after average year. We can't keep having, we have 5 good games in a row, and then we have 8 bad games in a row. So that's about it for me. Let me know what you guys thought about this last weekend. What teams had the best weekend, what teams had the worst weekend. Before I sign off, there is one other thing. I'm probably going to do, obviously, I've got my Chelsea transfer window activity to do after the transfer window shuts. I'm probably also going to do, I guess, an overall transfer window activity for the Premier League. Just talk about what teams had the best and what teams had the worst transfer window, and talk about probably the best signing, the most, I don't know what's the word, I guess the best deal that a team got. I'm probably going to be doing that after I finish up the Chelsea review. So keep an eye out for that. It'll happen within 1 or 2 days after the transfer window shuts. So just want to let you guys know about that. But that's all for me. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And I'll see you guys at the next weekend. Peace out.